Hi, this is Eddie Muller. Welcome back to the latest installment of Ask Eddie and Ann with my colleague, Ann Hockens, Director of Communications for the Film Noir Foundation. This is our March 2021 edition of what now is officially billed as Ask Eddie, but is now become Ask Eddie and Ann. So it's great. Okay, so I am totally ready to roll, and so we'll just tell people that we've already exchanged our pleasantries and all that stuff,
yes.
so they don't think I'm being rude to you. We'll just dive right into the questions.
Yes, we do say hello first.
Yes.
Okay, and we've got questions from Eric Nelson. There are several writers who have had many of their books adapted into noir films. Are there writers who have been overlooked and would provide good source material for noir films?
Interesting question. I don't know if it's writers who've been overlooked. Virtually everything that has ever been written has probably been considered as a film here or there. I will say that one, this pops into my head, one book that has resisted adaptation for years and years and years is a book called Black Wings Has My Angel by a writer named Elliot Chase, which was written sort of in the midst of the original noir era. I think it was early 50s. And for many, many years, people have tried to make a film of that, have tried to do an adaptation. I learned about the book from Barry Gifford. He wanted to publish it as the last book in his original Black Lizard series before he sold the whole thing to Viking or whoever it was, Vintage or Viking or somebody. And I don't believe that edition ever happened. But over the years, that property has been owned by various people, but they've never managed to turn it into a film. And if the people, I'm sure there are people who are watching this who have read the book and know how strange it is. It's like the most surreal Lovers on the Lamb story that, if it was made into a film, I would love to see David Lynch directing the film, because it feels very Lynchian, even though it was written in the early 50s. So is that Charlotte or Emily that?
That's Charlotte.
Okay, one of these days I'm going to learn to tell them apart. She's in early. She's making an appearance early this time.
Yeah, she's decided to come right away.
Well, because she's becoming the star of the whole thing.
I know, we get so many comments about her.
Yeah, it's gonna be Eddie and Ann and Charlotte, and then it'll just be Charlotte and Ann, and I'll go do something else. Okay. All right, so that's the one that hits me right off the top of my head. And it's not like Elliot Chase wrote a lot of other books. He did not. But I'll go with that one.
Excuse me. You recently discussed the reprinting of your excellent Gun Crazy book, Garnier's books, etc. Is there any thought given to reprinting the early Noir City annuals?
No. So my suggestion, I've tried to tell this to people, when they're gone, they're gone. And if you really want to get one, you buy them as soon as they come out. Now, what we may end up doing is cherry picking stories from those first few annuals, and we might do another collection, like a greatest hits anthology, drawing from like the first 5 or 6 volumes. But as for reprinting all of them, no. And they are pretty much sold out. I don't know that we really have a stock of anything. And geez, I think I've lost track. I think we're up to number 12 or 13. I think the new one that's about to come out will, I think, be number 13. And no, we will not reprint them again. So, and I know that they sell for a lot of money on eBay. And while it does irk me that these people who are selling them on eBay are keeping all that money. You know, they're charging, you know, $100 for some of these and pocketing all the money. None of it goes to the Film Noir Foundation. But, you know, that's the life of people trying to make a living selling stuff on the internet. So I don't really begrudge them that.
And if you do want to support the Film Noir Foundation, we sell all our North CDE magazines as back issues.
Correct.
So you can go to our North City e-magazine website and you can buy every issue or whatever issues you're interested in. And the issues have everything. So the annuals were actually didn't have everything the magazines had. So you can actually get everything we've written under North City e-magazine by doing that.
Good point, Ann, and that is absolutely true, because every year when we produce the annual, we are cherry picking from that year's work, and not everything gets in. So if you want everything, including all the interactive links and the, you know, all the kind of stuff we cram into those issues, you can just buy the back issues on their own. Good point.
Yeah, and that helps us. So that helps us restore things because the proceeds from that go towards our restoration efforts.
Absolutely.
How is your lovely, capable, and very friendly associate, Darl, who manned the booth at all of the Austin Noir cities during the pandemic? How is she doing during the pandemic? She wasn't manning tables during the pandemic. I almost misspoke.
Right. That's the value of proper sentence structure. How is Darl doing in this pandemic? I know her from
every time I talk to her.
Yeah, she's terrific. And let me just give a shout out. Eric obviously has met Darl at our Austin shows. Darl doesn't accompany me to all the festivals that we did on the road, but she is well known to people in San Francisco, Seattle, and Austin. And, you know, without you and Darl, the Film Noir Foundation would not work nearly as efficiently as it does. Darl is just the master of all behind the scenes work at the foundation. So, and she as well, she is doing just fine. So thank you for asking, Eric. I'm sure Darl will appreciate it. It's so funny because Darl's name is spelled D-A-R-Y-L. So anybody who's watching this who has any dealings with the foundation and has ever come in contact via email or online or something with Darl will think that they're talking to Daryl Sparks. And most people assume that that's a guy, but it's not. It's the lovely Darl Sparks, who is definitely not a guy.
And very, very stylish.
Indeed she is.
She's extremely stylish. She looks, so if you get to see her at a festival, you'll always, her outfits and hats are always fantastic. So these are from Mike. My question is about source novels for film noirs. Do you try and read them before you watch the film? And do you have any particular favorites, especially among the more obscure titles?
Well, I'll go right back to saying Black Wings Has My Angel right there. That was a twofer right there. Yeah, there are plenty of other ones. I'm embarrassed to say I have a hard time remembering books and things, you know, right off the top of my head. But the most important part of Mike's question there is, do I read the books beforehand? Hardly ever. I mean, it was only, you know, the major novels that I read before I saw the movies. Otherwise, I tend to see the movies first, and then I get very curious about how they compare to the book, and then I'll go back and read the book. I mean, in some cases, I would never have known about these books were they not turned into a movie. You know, like things like I don't know, like a book like I think it's called Once Off Guard, that was the source novel for The Woman in the Window. I mean, that's not a book I'm going to know anything about unless, you know, but I know it because I saw A Woman in the Window. You know, we've mentioned in the past Charlotte Armstrong,
Yeah.
It's doubtful I would have read Charlotte Armstrong's novels had I not seen The Unsuspected and Don't Bother to Knock and Talk About a Stranger, and these movies that were made from her books. And so then I went back and read the books and discovered what a really fine writer she was. So that's generally how it works. You know, and there are some pulpy ones in there, you know, Whit Masterson novels and Harry Whittington novels and stuff like that, where they aren't super well-known writers, but they've provided grist for some noir films that are pretty well known, you know.
Yeah, and so this is kind of a follow-up question to that. Any examples where you felt the book works better than the movie, or vice versa?
That's an interesting question, because I just, when we're doing this, I had just shown, the last film I showed on Noir Alley was Odds Against Tomorrow. And I prefer the movie to the book. And I'm a big fan of William P. McGivern, who wrote that novel, but just for various reasons, principally Harry Belafonte, I like the movie better, and I like his approach to the material a little bit better than McGivern's book, which is not to be critical of the novel at all. I noticed after I made some comments on TV that several people on social media said that Eddie was trashing the book, and that's not what I was doing at all. It's just, you know, when you have 5 minutes to talk about something, I can't really go into a thesis on why the book and the movie are different. I was really just talking about Harry Belafonte's feelings about the book and what he wanted to have changed. I think the book is fine for, you know, for its time and everything, but I think Belafonte's approach to it was ahead of its time, which is why I prefer the movie. So, and you know, this, I could spend the next hour just answering this question. So yeah. I'm gonna move on, but I'm happy to entertain this question anytime.
Okay. And I would love to hear both of your thoughts on Asphalt Jungle by W.R. Burnett, the book.
Is this still Mike? Mm-hmm. I like the book very much. You know, I like Burnett very much. Everything I've read by him, I have pretty much enjoyed, although, you know, there's another one. I'm going to say that the movie is actually a little bit better than the book, because as a noir guy, I didn't really care that much about the police work in the story. And there was a reporter character in the book that I don't really think is that essential to anything. I think Burnett just wanted to give a broad canvas where he's showing the crooks and the police and the politicians and the newspaper people as a more picaresque kind of thing. But I think Huston did the right thing in the movie by just focusing on the crooks.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that makes the Huston movie so effective is just that everyone is undone by their inherent nature. So, you know, the guy who likes to watch young girls dance is undone by that. You know, everyone is sort of, yeah, I just think that's really cool.
Yep, everyone carries the seeds of their own destruction.
There you go. And The Condemned, which I guess was the base for Try and Get Me.
That's actually a really interesting book, Joe Pagano. It's almost experimental. I highly recommend it if you can find a copy. The Condemned. It's his fictionalized version of that true story that happened in San Jose in 1933 about the last public lynching in California. But I just really appreciated how sophisticated and ambitious that novel was. It was certainly not a work of crime fiction. It was something much grander than that. And it also answered, reading the book after seeing the movie, answered the question, which surprised me, that the character of that Italian physicist, who's kind of, in some ways, the weak link in the movie, that character is in the book. And I could have sworn the first time I saw the movie that he was shoehorned into the movie to be the moral compass and the voice of reason and everything. And it smacked a little bit of Hollywood, you know, preachy Hollywood stuff. But that's in the book. That guy is in the book. And Cy Enfield, I through research learned, tried to take that character out. He tried to remove him from the script.
No moral center.
No, but the producer Robert Stillman sided with Pagano, who actually wrote the screenplay as well, and said, "No, that guy, he stays in. Renzo Chisano, he stays in."
Okay, The Setup by Joseph Moncure Marx. I didn't know that. Yeah.
The Setup is fantastic. It's an epic prose poem. But of course, which I really, really like. Boy, I have a funny story about that we don't have time for me to share this story, but one of these days, if we ever run short, I'll tell the story of presenting that film at the TCM Classic Film Festival with a young actor rapper named Malcolm Mays, who was, you know, I'm not going to go there, but it was really something. And of course, the thing about that poem that's so interesting is that the character of Stoker is black in the poem, and that kind of becomes what the whole thing is about. Yeah. And of course, the movie, you know, it's Robert Ryan, and you know, there you go. So they're two very, very different things.
If I Die Before I Wake by Sherwood King, also known as Lady from Shanghai. And did Wells actually read it? Because of course the legendary story is that.
Oh, I'm sure Wells actually read the book. I mean, he was a big fan of genre fiction and pulp fiction, and you know, the apocryphal story is that he just picked it up while he was on the phone with Harry Cohn and said, "I want to make this," because he was desperate to get a project or something, but which I don't actually believe. But you know, the plot is very similar. Except Wells changed it to, you know, very smartly to be more of a globe-trotting affair. The book is just set on the East Coast and it doesn't really go anywhere. But the plot is similar. It's very similar. And those are all pretty decent books. You know, if you're into crime fiction, those are all pretty good. I mean, like I said, The Condemned is a bit more than crime fiction, but and The Setup isn't a book, it's a poem.
How come neither W.R. Burnett or William McGivern get all that much love or coverage when scholars, fans discuss the great hard-boiled pulp fiction writers?
Their books have to stay in print. I mean, that's the big problem, is Burnett's books just aren't in print anymore. Yeah. Something about his approach to fiction, you know, I really enjoy it, but it doesn't feel contemporary. And I guess there's just other books in that same vein and other writers that people would rather read, you know. But I've had this conversation with a lot of people, you know, Gary Giddens and Jeffrey O'Brien and all these very, very knowledgeable people who love Burnett. And they ask the same thing, like, why no love for this guy? It's hard to say, you know. They just, something about the novels are part of the 20th century, and they maybe don't adapt well to the 21st century. That could be a big part of it.
And okay, so all those questions were from Mike. So thank you, Mike.
Okay, Mike. Mike, you got more than your share there, Mike. Good for you.
All right. This is from Doug. I think that The Long Goodbye is Robert Altman's best film for the same reason I think Jackie Brown is Quentin Tarantino's best film. In both cases, you have frequently self-indulgent filmmakers adapting excellent novels with strong plot structures that force the directors to be more disciplined and focused than they usually were. How do you two feel about this?
And you go first.
Okay, I do not like Robert Altman, and I do not like Quentin Tarantino. I love both those films. I think it's each of those of the films of those I've seen, because I haven't seen everything by either of them. Those are my favorite of their films, and so yeah.
So you're agreeing with Doug's premise here.
Oh yeah, and I think especially I mean with The Long Goodbye, it's just more of, I liked how Altman figured out how to do it, which I thought was really clever, of putting that sort of character into modern LA. And I think that was, I mean, it was just really smart in a way. And I think with Jackie Brown, it's just that Quentin Tarantino's characters seem to be extremely shallow. And I don't particularly like how he writes women. And I felt that the source novel was incredible, and that gave him a lot of strength that he lacks as a writer.
Okay.
So I'm can't wait to see all the comments about my remarks about Tarantino.
You know, I tend to agree pretty much with this. I'm thinking of other Altman films right now, and there are many that I don't like at all. And I have to admit, I did not like The Long Goodbye, you know, when it first came out, because I was such a devoted Chandler fanatic. I thought it was sacrilege in a way. I have changed my opinion about that. I think it is really a terrific movie. And the fact that, you know, Lee Brackett wrote that screenplay, and, you know, she was old school. She'd worked on The Big Sleep, and that was pretty smart. And the reality is, if you take out Elliot Gould and you take out the I don't want to call it stunt casting, but, you know, Nina Van Pallant and Henry Gibson, and you know, I'm not critical of at all. It was just Altman kind of being provocative in his casting, and provocative isn't even the right word. But beyond that, the movie is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward adaptation of the book, really, until the end.
It's a great end.
Yeah, and I like the movie, and I love Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
But that's because Jackie Brown is just stuffed with great actors from top to bottom, you know?
Yeah, and especially Robert Forster and Pam Grier. I mean, they're amazing, and their chemistry is amazing, and that relationship is amazing.
Yeah, so, you know, I cannot find any fault with Doug's premise here.
Me either. Okay, this is from Dave. Are there any great lost opportunities that were missed? A novel or short story that went unbought or unfilmed? A project that was announced and abandoned in pre or mid production?
Oh.
I assume we're referring to film noir, not
in general. Well, I know that on a previous episode we talked about we talked about Red Harvest, Hammett's Red Harvest, going unmade at Paramount in 1942. So that was one. Our colleague Vince Keenan, who is the editor-in-chief of the Noir City magazine, just wrote a piece for a different publication. I think it was for Crime Reads or something that you can find online, about the great unmade Orson Welles film Smiler with a Knife, that was based on a Nicholas Blake novel. Nicholas Blake being the author of a detective series featuring the character of Nigel Strangeways, and one of those, The Beast Must Die, we just restored. The Argentine version of that. But Smiler with a Knife is a project that Wells was going to make after Citizen Kane, and Lucille Ball was going to star in it, and it never got off the ground. Never, nothing ever happened with that, and still hasn't. So I'm going to cite that. And if you look up Smiler with a Knife, Vince Keenan, just Google that, and you can read the whole story behind the history of that aborted film. It's pretty fascinating.
Okay. And this is from Chuck. So many of us, thousands, have already ordered the new Dark City due in the steamy, hot, murdering month of July. We put up the dough, so how about a table of contents?
I'm not entirely sure that I understand this question, but
Can you, I don't know, it's expect you to throw it up online somewhere, the table of contents, to whet their appetites even more.
It's funny that I don't know how Chuck has this knowledge that thousands of people have pre-ordered the book.
It seems like her pro.
I have no knowledge of that, so I love hearing it, but I don't know if it's true. I think he must be asking, like, how is it different than the original edition of the book? And so I'll just say that it's the same contents except for 3 new chapters. Those chapters are the city desk, the big house, and the stage door. So you can puzzle out on your own what those chapters pertain to. And then every chapter has additional material added to it. And there's a slightly different structure. It's a much more deluxe treatment of the material because it's full color throughout. But
oh, nice.
But no panic, because it's a film noir book. So everything from a movie is in black and white, unless the movie's in color, like Leave Her to Heaven or Desert Fury, in which case we make certain that those images are in color to accurately reflect the film. And then there are posters and things and publicity photos of some actors in which we can use color to differentiate between them as the real people and them as in the movie. So if they appear in color, I'm talking about them as real people as opposed to in the movie.
That's where they're clever.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that it worked out. I got to tell you, I am totally psyched about this book coming out, because I'm just so happy with the way it looks. We really, we did 4 passes on this whole thing with the tweaking the layout and everything, and I'm very happy. Usually I get to design my own books, but this one I worked with the house running press, and they did a super job. Fantastic.
Yeah. First, is Otto Preminger's The 13th Letter a film noir, and do you know why it's so hard to find except overseas if ordered on eBay? We'll do that one first. So 13th Letter.
Yeah.
Is it film noir?
Yeah, I think it's a film noir. It certainly fits in Preminger's oeuvre of Hollywood noirs. I'm certain that the reason it is not in circulation has to do with the rights issues. I think the writer's name is Louis Chavance, I think, is the author, because as I'm sure you know, Anne, that The 13th Letter is based on Henri-Georges Clouzot's film Le Corbeau, The Raven, which I think was made in 1943. And I'm certain the fact that 20th Century Fox, I don't believe they ever included that in their original Fox film noir series. And
I don't think so.
And it has to be just because there was some underlying rights issue with the original material, that they had it for a while, and then all of a sudden when they tried to renew they couldn't get the literary rights again. So I'm assuming that's what it is.
Okay, and then he also mentioned The Double Thumbs Ride, which I know we can talk about. So anyway, I guess you want to talk a little about Double Thumbs Ride? Because I mean,
there was something in this question about why do you find these things in
lost
Europe?
Movies overseas, yeah.
Oh, well, that's part of my answer, is that the same rights regulations and things don't always apply in Europe. Yeah. So in many cases, a studio in this country will have the rights for the North American market, but not for the European market. So the film is available in Europe, but not in the United States. So this is why people own all region players.
Yes,
so that you can, and
I own
provided,
one.
yeah, so provided the European company that produces it is kind enough to put English subtitles on it, buy the European one and put it in your all region player, because in some cases that's the only way you're going to get to see it. I have a sneaking suspicion that that's how The Devil Thumbs a Ride will reemerge. It will reemerge overseas, and because Warner Brothers owns the rights to that film in the United States, but has no intention of doing anything with it because they cannot clear the underlying literary rights. But Warner Brothers does not own the rights to that film in Europe.
And
So,
go ahead.
No, that's it.
Yeah, and it just, his last question was, do they possess master copies and make duplicates when someone orders a copy? And I just like to address that, if you don't mind. So a lot of times the things on eBay and stuff are not legal copies. They do not own the rights to the films, and they're just making the copies anyway. But a lot of times you can actually get legal copies overseas if you're willing to do stuff, because there's, and like, you know, there's like Arrow in Britain and Indicator and some other companies, and they do put out stuff. The BFI puts out a bunch of great classic films. So I just encourage people as much as possible to buy legal copies of stuff. And, you know, instead of watching something on YouTube for free, if you can find a legal copy of it, to actually pay to stream it, because this is, I mean, this is how people make their money. And it's not, you know, and the thing is, people have to remember, it's not like just the Hollywood top people and stuff in the film studios. It's also, you know, the people that work for the streaming companies and the people that get a copy, you know, get a royalty check because they wrote something. You know, it's just, you know, pay for it if you can't find it.
I thank you for saying that, Anne. I could not agree more. For example, my friend Serge Bromberg, who is one of the great cinephiles in the world, he runs a company in Paris called Lobster Films, and they work very hard at restoring and bringing back out in digital formats, you know, lost classics of cinema. And Serge, you know, puts up the money to do this. And if you pirate from him and you know, you take something and upload it to the internet and everybody says, hey, guess what? You don't have to pay for it. You know, Serge will eventually go out of business if enough people do that. And that just doesn't seem right. You know, it's not like these are people like Serge and Jeff Massino at Flickr Alley and the folks at Kino Lorber, even Peter Becker at Criterion. We are not talking about major entertainment conglomerates here. We are talking about real diehard movie fans who are in the business of distributing these things to as many people as they can. And it is a costly and getting increasingly more costly proposition. And people need to pay for this stuff. They do not rely on YouTube for these things. You know, when our restorations like Too Late for Tears or Woman on the Run or something go up on YouTube, we check, and if it's up there, we demand they take it down. And it's not like I'm trying to deny people the opportunity to see the films. It's just like the floodgates open, you know, then everybody is just getting it for free. And it's like, you know, it cost us $85,000 to restore Too Late for Tears. We're never going to make that money back. But, you know, we would like to get something for our trouble.
Yeah, and then that money gets turned around into other projects. I'd also like to point out, yeah, and I was really like upset because I know one time I belonged to a lot of film noir groups, and you know, someone had a link to YouTube of our restoration, and I was like, you guys are supposed to love film noir, and you're doing this because that's anyway. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Well, it's an interesting observation, Anne, because some people will think if you take money for anything, there are people who will say you're greedy. And it's like, really? I don't think so.
Well, I would like to point out that I work a full-time job in addition to this job. So, we're not like pulling massive salaries for the people that work for us.
Very, very true. I mean, prior, and now, quite honestly, I mean, my gig at TCM sort of helps underwrite all the work that I do. And I love the fact that TCM is aware of that, and they let me talk about the Film Noir Foundation and the restoration work. It gives them credibility because one of their hosts is a film preservationist, and which is great. But prior to getting that gig, I was not retiring on the work I'm doing here for the Film Noir Foundation. Far from it, So anyway, okay, that's okay. That we can move on.
Okay, and this is from Sig. Are there? No, sorry. Let's go back one. I almost missed one. Michael asks, in a recent show, Eddie said that he thought Psycho was borderline film noir. Since the film is intensely dark and involves two people conspiring to kill a third, a la Double Indemnity and The Postman Always Reads Twice, does Eddie consider Diabolique borderline noir?
Okay. Funny. I thought for a second he was saying they're plotting to kill somebody in Psycho, which is like, where'd that come in? But no, he means Diabolique. Yes, definitely. I have shown Diabolique at noir festivals, and I totally consider that to be a film noir. Absolutely. The thing that's great about that movie is it has such a unique, creepy and clammy feel to the film that, and some memorable images in the film. People want to call it like a horror movie or something, and it's not at all. I mean, what is it if it's not film noir? I mean, it's a very a classic murder plot, just as our friend here just pointed out, like Postman Always Rings Twice or Double Indemnity or any of those things. So I absolutely consider Diabolique to be a film noir.
Okay, and this one is from Sig. Are there any movies or directors that are almost universally considered great that you just don't get what the big deal is about? For example, I just don't get Ingmar Bergman.
I get Ingmar Bergman. Do I crave Ingmar Bergman movies? Boy, I have to be in a very specific mood for Cries and Whispers and Scenes from a Marriage, and that's a tough one. I don't want to sound like I'm copping out in this answer, but I don't really like to answer questions like this because I can get in trouble because the next thing I'll say, I've never liked this guy's movies, and then people are like, Eddie hates so and so, and it's like, no, I really don't. I don't. My brain doesn't actually work that way. I don't get like upset at the films people make. I'm not like these people on social media who spend a lot of time bitching and moaning about stuff they don't like. I just don't watch it. Yeah. If I don't like it, I just don't watch it. And I say, that's interesting. That doesn't appeal to me. I would never go out of my way to say that is an overrated filmmaker. Yeah. It just doesn't matter to me, So no, there's nobody that I despise enough that I would go out of my way to say this person is totally overrated as a filmmaker. I just don't operate that way. How about you? Is there anybody that you've already made it perfectly clear that you don't like Robert Altman and you don't like Quentin Tarantino. So is there anybody else you can add to that list, Dan?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, let's hear it.
Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson. Ooh, okay.
It's just gotten to the point where he's just so like
precious.
He's really twee. Twee, I think is
there
what
you
I'm
go,
looking for.
there you go.
No, I had one of my employees one time. I used to come up before I used to manage on 15 Video. And I was talking to one of the women who worked for me, and she said that like the Royal Tenenbaums was like the greatest film of all time. And I said to her, I think what you mean is that it's your favorite film of our time, because if you think that's the greatest film of all time, then you have not watched enough movies.
Yeah.
So anyway.
There you go. But Gene Hackman is pretty great in that film.
No, I mean, it's a good, but you know something, you know what a great filmmaker would have done? They would have really been brother and sister.
You've thought about this. You've given a lot of thought to this.
That, you know what I'm saying? That's what a great filmmaker would. Instead of just over and over and over hammering that she was adopted over and over and over.
Yeah. Well, you know, I hope this doesn't come as a shock to people watching this, but I would rather spend my time doing productive and positive things than arguing about the relative merits of filmmakers. You know, if you love it, I'm happy that you found something that you love and you're passionate about. I'm not gonna be that guy who jumps in on social media to say you don't know what you're talking about. He's terrible. It's like,
no, I don't do that on social media. Yeah, no, I'm just too busy just like talking about the people I love. I find that it always works out better in the end if you accentuate the positive. Well, no, I mean, if I get excited about something, then I want people to know about it because I want them to watch it. So I tend to be like that. Like when TCM showed all those Almodovar films on Sundays, like I posted about that every single week on my personal page because I was really, really excited that they were showing them and I really wanted people to see those movies.
Yeah.
So shout out for them for doing that. I was astonished when I found out they were doing that. Made me really happy. Lauren from Chicago. Is Elvis Presley's King Creole film noir with rock music? And I felt like, didn't we do one of our Noir or Nots on that film?
I believe so. Well, I will say this. It's the most noir of any Elvis Presley movie.
Yeah.
No question about that. And it's a good film. You know, Michael Curtiz, right? Walter Matthau's in it. Carolyn Jones is. I would definitely show that film at a Noir City Film Festival. And who knows, maybe someday, you know, a couple of years from now, if I'm still doing Noir Alley, it may even turn up on Noir Alley because, yeah, I do feel that qualifies as a noir.
Also, a few weeks ago, you talked about movies you would never want to see again. For me, it's Border Incident. I find it vile and disgusting. George Murphy's execution still gives me nightmares. Yeah, and I read that comment mainly because I got to tell you, that is one of the most like terrifying death scenes is in Border Incident. I'm
not sure whether this, who is it that sent this in? What was the person's name?
No, Lauren from Chicago.
Lauren from Chicago. I'm not sure whether Lauren is hates the movie or just found it really intense, too intense to watch again. I mean, vile and disgusting is pretty strong. Makes me think that she didn't actually like the movie.
Yeah.
It's unsettling. I mean, it's, you know, nobody did violence quite as intensely as Anthony Mann. Mm-hmm. And I never missed the opportunity to call George Murphy's death scene the most harrowing scene in film noir. It's not all the time that you get the opportunity to have that play on words, you know. So
God, Eddie.
Anyway, so I like that movie. I think that's a really good movie. So but the question was was there a film that we never want to see again?
She just said that because we discussed that previously, so we're just Lauren was throwing in their own 2 cents about what they did because we talked about that before.
The film that we wouldn't want to see again. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think I said it was like a Gaspar Noé film. I think Irreversible.
Yeah. So this one's Vinny from Astoria. Is there any film noirs that people rave about that you just don't care for?
I'm seeing a common denominator here. People want me to dish on stuff, to like, be negative about things. And so it's a film noir that people rave about that I just don't get it. Is that the question?
Or you just don't care for?
Okay, I've said this before, so this may not come as a surprise, but I am not a big fan of the 1946 Postman Always Rings Twice.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I watch it. Lana Turner is fabulous. I love John Garfield. As an adaptation of the book, I actually think it's the fourth best one that's been made.
Yeah.
Right. So, so there's that. But that's not like, I'm not dumping on it. So there, I'll let it stand with that.
All right. And is there any release date for repeat performance on Blu-ray?
I wish I could give you a date. I can tell you that it is definitely coming, probably, the second half of 2021. This pandemic has just screwed everything up.
Yeah.
But it's coming, and I will say the good news is that will open the floodgates, because I feel that as soon as that one, which is next in the pipeline, as soon as that finally gets resolved, then we'll be issuing a bunch of these things, the Argentine films, and I'm very, very hopeful we'll also be putting out some of the B noir that we've restored, like The Guilty and High Tide. And let me just, this wasn't a question, but I'm just going to say I'm extremely happy this week because we have now officially begun work on the new restoration of the Argyle Secrets. We actually have taken receipt of the materials from the British Film Institute. They were finally able to ship them over here. They are at UCLA. They're being inspected and evaluated now. And in short order, that restoration project will begin. So by the end of this year, we will have that film restored.
That's awesome news. Okay, here's the last question from Vinny. Who is the second best actor in film noir after Humphrey Bogart?
Well done, Vinny. There is no question that Humphrey Bogart is the most important actor in regards to the film noir movement. But after that, it's not a best thing. It's a preference thing. I will say that from the time that I wrote Dark City, and that came out back in 1998 until today, it's really fascinating how Robert Ryan's stock has risen amongst, I'm not going to say the average movie fan, because none of these people who love old movies are average. They're all above average. But it is amazing how many people are now on the Robert Ryan bandwagon.
And we have an issue of North City E-Magazine that's dedicated to Robert Ryan that you can get if you go to the North City E-Magazine back issue website, which you can, go to our website, filmnoirfoundation.org, to find it. And it's great. I mean, it's covers like his entire noir career. A bunch of great writers contribute essays. So we all kind of did different periods and different films.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to throw that in there.
But beyond that, I mean, it's a toss-up. If you're talking about the actors, you can easily make a case for Robert Mitchum. You can make a case for Robert Ryan, Richard Widmark, Richard Conte, Burt Lancaster. Burt Lancaster, the first 8 films he did in Hollywood were all noir films,
Yeah.
Sterling Hayden. There's a lot of them out. It's a personal preference thing, really.
Yeah. No, it really is. Even though it's funny, my mind immediately went to Robert Ryan, actually, though, when I read the question. I think because just Ryan's range of performances in noir is so wide You know what I mean? He plays such a wide range of different types of characters within in the genre. I think is probably why I think of him, is just because I feel like his work feels really diverse.
Yeah, and it's very, very intense. He's a very intense actor, whereas that was not something that Bogart or Mitchum did.
Mhm.
You know, they were more kind of laconic. There's not much that's laconic about Robert Ryan. He puts it right out there, you know.
Yeah.
Although if you've seen Born to Be Bad, you know that that's like his
That's
like his sexy role, you know, where he is like the studly writer that Joan Fontaine can't get enough of, you know. And I really like him in that movie, which is a great film for people who love Robert Ryan, who are used to seeing him, you know, Crossfire, On Dangerous Ground, all that stuff. To see him in Born to Be Bad is kind of a revelation, because he is not, it's a Robert Mitchum role.
It is, you know, it's totally a Robert
film,
Mitchum
you know?
role, but he is super hot in it.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. Not only that, but also Carol Burnett has the most hilarious parody of that film on her old Carol Burnett show. It's a really
amazing. Who knew that anybody knew that film enough to parody it?
Oh yeah. It's great. I was so shocked when I saw it, you know, because I can't believe you're doing Born to Be Bad. I mean,
Do you remember when we showed that at Noir City?
Oh yeah. I loved the film. I had never seen it before.
And it really blew people's minds, because we had the original ending of the film that Warner Brothers found, and we showed it after the movie ended. We said, now stick around, because we're going to show you the way the film originally ended. And that was so remarkable that existed, and we could actually get it digitized and show it, because it was so much better.
Yeah.
So much better. Anyway, you can see it on if you get the DVD or Blu-ray of the film, they actually included the original ending as a bonus feature. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I like the original ending. It was awesome. I once heard you describe Telegraph Hill as the nexus of San Francisco film noir locations. I couldn't agree more, but I thought your viewers would like to hear you explain why, and that's from Brian.
Is that from Brian Hollins by any chance?
It is from Brian Hollins.
Oh, very good. Because I want to give a shout out to Brian. He is realsf.com. Brian does a fabulous website where he tracks the shooting locations for virtually every movie that's ever been made in San Francisco.
It's a great website.
I could just get lost in that website for hours on end. It's fabulous. Anyway, I knew that had to be Brian Hollins asking that question. Good friend of the Film Noir Foundation. He also did the on our Woman on the Run DVD. He did the little featurette on all the locations that were used in that film. Anyway, the intersection of Union and Montgomery there on Telegraph Hill is the nexus for noir in San Francisco, because if you stand in that intersection, you have Midge's apartment in Vertigo is on the northeast corner. Right down the street, like 6 houses down the street, is where Lauren Bacall lived in Dark Passage. Then on the other side of the street, a little further down, is where Valentina Cortese lived in House on Telegraph Hill. At the other corner, the southwest corner, was Speedy's Grocery, which is visible in a number of these films, including House on Telegraph Hill. On the other side of that intersection towards downtown is where Tony Curtis lived in The Midnight Story, which is a lesser known but really good San Francisco film. Down Union Street and around the corner towards the Bay Bridge is where Marie Windsor lived in The Sniper. So, you know, a lot of stuff is going on right at that intersection. And it was very, very popular for filmmakers because literally, if you put your camera in the middle of that intersection, you can see downtown San Francisco to the south. You can see the Bay Bridge to the east. You can see a beautiful view of North Beach and Russian Hill to the west. And you can see the Bay. I don't think you can see Alcatraz, but you can see the Bay on the other side looking north. So no matter how you staged a scene, you got the full San Francisco effect from that location.
Yeah.
So that's why it was a favorite among filmmakers.
What differentiates neo-noir from classic noir besides the picture being in color? Also, what is your favorite neo-noir film? And that's from Adam.
You know, I've talked about this. I kind of am the noir guy, and I really don't see that much of a distinction any longer, except the color. But even then, I mean, there was color in the classic era, right? Leave Her to Heaven, I consider to be a noir. Slightly Scarlet, I consider to be a film noir. Niagara is definitely a film noir. Inferno is a film noir. They were all in color, and nobody calls them neo-noir. So I don't have a huge use for the term. It, especially given that the term was coined about 5 or 6 years after color took over. So yeah, I seem to remember like Harper, the Paul Newman movie based on the Ross Macdonald novel, being kind of the first film that people called a neo-noir. And back then it felt like, well, this is modern and those films are old. But now those films like Harper and all that, they don't seem that modern anymore. They seem like a natural extension. Like Harper feels like a 60s version of The Big Sleep. That's exactly what it feels like, right? And Paul Newman is doing his Bogart impression. And I shouldn't say that, because Paul Newman is doing his version of a Bogart kind of character. He's not doing a Bogart impression. And he's really good in the film. So I don't really put a lot of stock in the term, and you don't hear me use it that often. Of the modern noir films, which is more the way I look at it, like it's classic era, modern era, contemporary era. That's sort of how I look at it. To me, there's no question that Chinatown is the film. Right? I mean, that's the great modern noir film that's in color. That's the one.
No, I think pretty much. Okay, this was for.
Do you have one? Do you have a favorite like newer noir film?
I'm trying to think about favorite. Honestly, I think kind of the one that's really stayed with me. And it's not like I've watched a lot, but it just really left like a mark on me, is A Simple Plan.
Yeah.
That film is really haunting, and I saw it in the theater when it came out with my ex-husband at the time. And that film is like, and it's not that, and I'm not even sure if I've seen it since then, but it just is always like stuck with me. It's just a haunting film.
That's a great choice, Anne. Great choice, because it's often overlooked, but to me, it's such a classic. The screenplay is great. Yeah. The actors are all really, really great. Bill Paxton is so fantastic, and that was when Billy Bob was still playing kind of tetched characters,
Yeah.
But great film, and kind of overlooked. So I'm very glad you mentioned that.
And I'm always very drawn to things. I have 3 siblings, so I tend to be very drawn to stories with siblings in them. That's always something that always seems to really draw me in. And just the scene where Billy Bob's like talking about like holding that girl's hand. It's just like almost in tears because you see what his life has been like. It's available. People go watch it. It's just such a great film.
Well, and now you put me in the mind of another film I love, which is One False Move, that Bill Paxton is also the star of, and Billy Bob Thornton is in that as well. Carl Franklin, written and directed by Carl Franklin. That is just a dynamite film. Absolutely fantastic movie. I'm so hoping that I get to show this on TCM this year, and I'm hoping that we can get Carl to come on and do an interview with it, because I think that's a fantastically I don't know how overlooked it is, but it's just a great movie.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just an incredible film, and it just also something just because I'm kind of from that part of the world. I'm originally from Oklahoma, and and of course Billy Bob is from Arkansas. Razorbacks, and it really captures something about that frankly is usually done really poorly in Hollywood films, where it's just very authentic, and yeah, it's a good movie. Okay, so you want to do one more question?
One more question, and then we'll have to go to part 2.
Okay. So this is from Victoria. As far as I'm concerned, although you've introduced us to so many fine films over the years, it doesn't get any better than Out of the Past. Sheer perfection. I know the black and white cinematography makes it the perfect noir, but I have been obsessed for years with the colorized version. Will we ever get to see it? Does Ted Turner have it locked away in a vault? I wonder if others are similarly curious. Anything you can do will be greatly appreciated. I did not know there was a colorized version. Did you?
No.
Oh. I did not know of its existence.
And I can guarantee you, I am not going to lift a finger to look for it. But that's interesting, and I appreciate this very much. And I agree with the sentiment that if somebody said to me, "What's the perfect noir film?" Nobody ever says that, right? They say, "What's your favorite? What's the best? What's the definitive?" They don't say, "What's the perfect noir film?" Because I would have to say Out of the Past is the perfect noir film. I actually think it's, on its own terms, it accomplishes everything it sets out to do perfectly, which I'm not sure Double Indemnity does that.
Yeah.
But Out of the Past definitely does. FYI, Ted Turner has nothing to do with TCM anymore, and he no longer owns the film collection. That's all kind of ancient history now. Thankfully, when AT&T bought, what's now Warner Media, and Turner Broadcasting was part of all that, they were smart enough to not mess with the brand, the Turner brand, so that they didn't change the name, right? Because it's very interesting that, isn't it fascinating? I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this. But isn't it fascinating that they have changed the name of Warner Brothers? It's no longer Warner Brothers, it's Warner Media. Right? So the Warner name is still there on Warner Media, but Turner Classic Movies is still Turner Classic Movies, even though they've taken Ted Turner's name off everything else that he built. They've taken it off of everything. But they did not mess with Turner Classic Movies because it had the strongest brand of any of those things. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Ann, are we gonna reel it in at this point? Yeah, I know, it's so funny. But I think it's best that we not exhaust people in these installments.
Yes, this is what we're trying to do. We're really trying to figure out how to tighten up a little more so that we don't exhaust everyone.
But people seem to enjoy the format. I certainly do. It's always fun talking to you, and And so in 1 week,
Yes. So we'll be back next
back answering the rest of your questions, or as many as we can fit in what is now 78 minutes. See, Ann, this is like an old B movie from the 1940s. 78 minutes.
Right.
You could have watched Destination Murder in the time it takes for us to do one of these shows. They would have shown you an entire B movie.
I know, with an incredibly complicated plot.
Yeah, but we're barely scratching the surface for modern films, right? I mean, if this was a Chris Nolan movie, there'd still be an hour and 15 minutes to go. You know,
which is too long.
Movies are different. Movies are different now. The priorities are different. And you also don't ever, well, hardcore fans like the people that watch us will watch many movies in a day.
Yeah.
You know, everything today is based on, they think it's one. They think people are watching one, so they better give them everything in that one movie, right? I mean, that's hence why every movie made today is 20 minutes too long, at least 20 minutes too long.
Yeah. I would say sometimes half an hour, 40 minutes too long. I actually, I shouldn't say which film it is because I've already stepped on enough toes with my opinions on stuff, but I was watching a very famous film. It was highly regarded by a director we'd mentioned at one point tonight. And I literally stopped the film with the person I was watching it with. And I turned around and said, "How much longer is this?" And he said, 45 minutes. And I said, "I'm done. I'm not sitting through another 45 minutes of this film."
That's officially a walkout in the, now you just turn it off. In the old days, it was like you walked out.
Yeah, and I rarely do that. You do not know how unusual that is for me to not finish a film. But I was done. It was just like, this isn't that interesting, and this certainly does not need to be this long, and I'm not sitting through another 45 minutes. I am not doing it. So.
Life's a little too precious for that. You know, I hope this doesn't come as a shock to people because, I was a film critic at one point. I don't consider myself to be a film critic, so I am under no obligation to watch anything to the end if I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I don't even think film critics should be under that obligation, because if you hate it for the first 40 minutes, why are you suddenly going to have a difference of opinion, right? It's 40 bad minutes. So I have no problem with turning stuff off, especially, we're opening up a whole other can of worms now, because I don't agree with people who say it was so slow. Like, slow is not bad. Slow is not bad at all.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Is it engrossing? Are you in it? Then it's okay. But
but it just depends on your mood too, because like last night, Ted and I, by the way, Ted runs our website. Ted and I were getting together, and he gave me a choice of 2 movies, and I was like, I just want something that's just gonna go. I really need something like that. And we watched 1917, and that was amazing.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh God, it is so incredible, and it's non-stop. I loved it. Because it's a very serious, it's a war story and stuff, but it just all the way through. And it was just, I was completely engrossed in it. And also the cinematography is unbelievable. Fred Deakins was the DP on that. But yeah, I highly recommend that. But it was just so great to see something paced that way. It wasn't like, because I think sometimes people think if you want to be artistic or deep, you have to be like slow. And there's times when I really want something like that I like a slower pace and stuff, but it was nice to be able to watch something that was that like pulling you along the story quickly and just really well paced, but also really deep and meaningful. I cried in a couple parts in that movie. And it had brothers in it.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's funny. At some point, we should do a thing where we just talk about recent things we've seen that have taken us by surprise and that we really enjoyed. I can't watch 1917 at home because I tend to watch movies with Kathleen.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really like war movies.
Yeah.
And understandably. So
Yeah.
that's not something we're going to watch together. But before we sign off, this is maybe we should make this a regular thing where we like throw out something totally unrelated at the end. So she got me hooked on this thing because we recently got a really great smart TV.
Yeah.
Right? Because she just got tired of me doing everything makeshift. You know, like, let me connect my iPad via this cable to this thing and we'll get it. And she said, can't we just get a TV that does all this stuff automatically? So we did. And now we can just sit there and dial up whatever the hell we want, you know, which is extraordinary. You know, you just you like search for the Brothers Rico. And it's like, seriously, this TV is going to find this movie for me? But so we have to share, right? So it's like my night, her night, and her taste is entirely different than mine. And she wanted to watch this thing called Velvet, which is a soap opera, a Spanish language soap opera.
Yeah.
Do you know about this show?
Well, I mean, I know about telenovelas, but I haven't seen it.
It's not a really, it's like it's a telenovela directed by Douglas Sirk. That's what this show is. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good.
In Spanish, set in the world of haute couture in the late 1950s.
Ooh.
All centered around a department store in Madrid and like the family that runs the department store. And it's like, department stores have always fascinated me ever since I was a kid. Like this is the greatest location for something, you know. One of my great fantasies of all time is being locked overnight in a department store, right? That would just be the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, and the show is all about the hierarchy from, you know, the boss, the big boss, all the way down to the seamstresses and the messengers and everything. And the style of this show is just so extraordinary that I got totally sucked into it, and I love it. I'm just obsessed with the show. But unfortunately, Kathleen is now off doing business, and I can't go on with the show. I can't watch it without her, you know. So it's like, damn, I want to see what happens. And it's really, really sexy. It's incredibly sexy.
Well, it's Spanish, so.
Exactly. And it's like, why? And it's so funny to think about that, because like, why do I accept a show from Spain where everybody in it is impossibly good looking?
Yeah.
Just everybody, you know, from the children all the way to like the 80-year-old men. They're just like stunningly good looking. And if that was on an American TV show, I would say, this is so fake. This is so, people don't actually look like that. You know, but in this instance, I'm totally into it because it's such a fantasy, and it's so, you know, I'm just lost in this pandemic. It's like amazing to watch this show and just lose yourself in it. So that's my big recommendation, Velvet. Now that I got Better Call Saul out of the way,
you got something else to start on.
I'm now kind of binging on this Velvet show. I'm going to have to turn in my like noir guy cred, because people will watch this and they'll say, seriously, Eddie is like into this? And it's like, yeah, look at the clothes. The clothes are to die for in this show. So anyway, that's it. Okay, we're done. Okay, we like almost 90 minutes now. We stopped when we were at 78, and now we're almost up to 90. So, okay, Ann, we'll see you next week. Deal?
You will.
Okay, fantastic. All right, very good, dear. And thank you, everybody, for your fabulous questions. And we come back and see us next time. Ask Eddie and Ann. Bye.